This reading is for Ali, who managed somehow to take at least one of my classes every year for 5 years and still not encounter Gilgamesh. I hope you enjoy it. Before I start reading, a quick word on the text. In terms of background, I've put a link to an introductory talk in the introduction to this reading. The text I'm reading from is Benjamin Foster's translation published by Norton Critical Editions. The surviving original text exists on 11 clay tablets, all of which are badly damaged, with the result that only about 60%, roughly, of the original text survives. There are gaps between lines, and there are gaps within lines. Where there's a gap between lines, I'll note that by saying how many lines Foster thinks are missing, and when there's a gap within a line, I'll simply pause for roughly how long it would take to read that gap. This is the best way I can think of to approximate with my voice the experience of reading a broken text on a page or on a tablet. This, I hope, will give some sense of there being other bits and pieces that are lost and maybe peeking through the gaps that perhaps with a little imagination we can wrap our minds around. But enough talk. Tablet 1. He who saw the wellspring, the foundations of the land, who knew, was wise in all things. Gilgamesh, who saw the wellspring, the foundations of the land, who knew, was wise in all things. He, throughout, full understanding of it all he gained. He saw what was secret and revealed what was hidden. He brought back tidings from before the flood. From a distant journey came home weary, at peace, engraved all his hardships on a monument of stone. He built the walls of ramparted Uruk, the lustrous treasury of hollowed Eanna. See its upper wall, whose facing gleams like copper. Gaze at its lower course, which nothing will equal. Mount the stone stairway, there from days of old, approach Eanna, the dwelling of Ishtar, which no future king, no human being will equal. Go up, pace out the walls of Uruk, study the foundation terrace and examine the brickwork. Is not its masonry of kiln-fired brick? And did not 7 masters lay its foundations? 1 square mile of city, 1 square mile of gardens, 1 square mile of clay pits, and 1/2 square mile of Ishtar's dwelling. 3.5 square miles is the measure of Uruk. Search out the foundation box of copper, release its lock of bronze, raise the lid upon its hidden contents, take up and read from the lapis tablet of him, Gilgamesh, who underwent many hardships. Surpassing all kings, for his stature renowned, heroic offspring of Uruk, a charging wild bull, he leads the way in the vanguard, he marches at the rear, defender of his comrades. Mighty flood wall, protector of his troops, furious flood waves smashing walls of stone. Wild calf of Lugalbanda, Gilgamesh is perfect in strength. Suckling of the sublime wild cow, the woman Ninsun, towering Gilgamesh is uncannily perfect. Opening passes in the mountains, digging wells in the highlands' verge, traversing the ocean, the vast sea, to the sun's rising, exploring the furthest reaches of the earth, seeking everywhere for eternal life, reaching in his might Utnapishtim, the distant one, restorer of holy places that the deluge had destroyed, founder of rights for the teeming peoples, who could be his like for kingly virtue, and who, like Gilgamesh, can proclaim, I am king. Gilgamesh was singled out from the day of his birth. 2/3 of him was divine, 1/3 of him was human. The lady of birth drew his body image. The god of wisdom brought his stature to perfection. And here there's a gap, a couple of broken lines. Stately in feature, in body lofty. His foot was a triple cubit, his leg 6 times 12, his stride was 6 times 12 cubits, his thumb was cubits, his cheek had a beard like his locks. The locks of his hair grew thick as a grain field. He was perfection in height, ideally handsome. In the enclosure of Uruk he strode back and forth, lording it like a wild bull, his head thrust high. The onslaught of his weapons had no equal. His teammates stood forth by his game stick. He was harrying the young men of Uruk beyond reason. Gilgamesh would leave no son to his father. Day and night he would rampage fiercely. This was the shepherd of ramparted Uruk. This was the people's shepherd. Bold, superb, accomplished, and mature, Gilgamesh would leave no girl to her mother. The warrior's daughter, the young man's spouse, goddesses kept hearing their plaints. The gods of heaven, the lords who command, said to Anu, "You created this headstrong wild bull in ramparted Uruk. The onslaught of his weapons has no equal." His teammates stand forth by his game stick. He is harrying the young men of Uruk beyond reason. Gilgamesh leaves no son to his father. Day and night he rampages fiercely. This is the shepherd of ramparted Uruk. This is the people's shepherd. Bold, superb, accomplished, and mature, Gilgamesh leaves no girl to her mother. The warrior's daughter, the young man's spouse. Anu kept hearing their complaints. Anu speaks. Let them summon Anuni, the Great One. She created the boundless human race. Let her create a partner for Gilgamesh, mighty in strength. Let them contend with each other, that Uruk may have peace. They summoned the birth goddess, Aruru. You, Aruru, created the boundless human race. Now, create what Anu commanded. To his stormy heart let one be equal. Let them contend with each other, that Uruk may have peace. When Aruru heard this, she conceived within her what Anu commanded. Aruru wet her hands. She pinched off clay. She tossed it upon the steppe. She created valiant Enkidu in the steppe, offspring of potter's clay, with the force of the hero Ninurta. Shaggy with hair was his whole body. He was made lush with head hair like a woman. The locks of his hair grew thick as a grain field. He knew neither people nor inhabited land. He dressed as animals do. He fed on the grass with gazelles. With beasts he jostled at the water-hole. With wildlife he drank his fill of water. A hunter, a trapping man, encountered him at the edge of the water-hole. One day, a second, a third, he encountered him at the edge of the water-hole. When he saw him, the hunter stood stock still with terror. As for Enkidu, he went home with his beasts, aghast, struck dumb, his heart in a turmoil, his face drawn, with woe in his vitals, his face like a traveller's from afar. The hunter made ready to speak, saying to his father, "My father, there is a certain fellow who has come from the uplands. He is the mightiest in the land. Strength is his. Like the force of heaven, so mighty is his strength. He constantly ranges over the uplands, constantly feeding on grass with beasts, constantly making his way to the edge of the water-hole. I'm too frightened to approach him. He has filled in the pits I dug. He has torn out the traps I set. He has helped the beasts, wildlife of the steppe, slip from my hands. He will not let me work the steppe." His father made ready to speak, saying to the hunter, "My son, in Uruk dwells Gilgamesh. There is no one more mighty than he. Like the force of heaven, so mighty is his strength. Take the road, set off toward Uruk. Tell Gilgamesh of the mightiness man. He will give you Shamhat the harlot. Take her with you. Let her prevail over him instead of a mighty man. When the wild beasts draw near the water-hole, let her strip off her clothing, lay bare her charms. When he sees her, he will approach her. His beasts that grew up with him on the steppe will deny him." Giving heed to the advice of his father, the hunter went forth. He took the road, set off toward Uruk. To the king, Gilgamesh, he said these words. "There is a certain fellow who has come from the uplands. He is the mightiest in the land. Strength is his. Like the force of heaven, so mighty is his strength. He constantly ranges over the uplands, constantly feeding on grass with the beasts, constantly making his way to the edge of the water-hole. I am too frightened to approach him. He has filled the pits I dug. He has torn out the traps I set. He has helped the beasts, wildlife of the steppe, slip from my hands. He will not allow me to work the steppe." Gilgamesh said to him, to the hunter, "Go, hunter, take with you Shamhat the harlot. When the wild beasts draw near the water-hole, let her strip off her clothing, laying bare her charms. When he sees her, he will approach her. The beasts that grew up with him on the steppe will deny him." Forth went the hunter, taking with him Shamhat the harlot. They took the road, going straight on their way. On the third day they arrived at the appointed place. Hunter and harlot sat down to wait. One day, a second day, they sat by the edge of the waterhole. The beasts came to the waterhole to drink. The wildlife came to drink their fill of water. But as for him, Enkidu, born in the uplands, who feeds on grass with gazelles, who drinks at the waterhole with beasts, who with wildlife drinks his fill of water, Shamhat looked upon him, a human man, a barbarous fellow from the midst of the steppe. There he is, Shamhat, open your embrace. Open your embrace, let him take your charms. Be not bashful, take his vitality. When he sees you, he will approach you. Toss aside your clothing, let him lie upon you. Treat him, a human, to woman's work. His wild beasts that grew up with him will deny him, as in his ardor he caresses you. Shamhat loosened her garments, she exposed her loins, he took her charms. She was not bashful, she took his vitality, she tossed aside her clothing, and he lay upon her. She treated him, a human, to woman's work. And in his ardor he caressed her. 6 days, 7 nights was Enkidu aroused, flowing into Shamhat. After he had had his fill of her delights, he set off toward his beasts. When they saw him, Enkidu, the gazelles shied off. The wild beasts of the steppe shunned his person. Enkidu had spent himself. His body was limp. His knees stood still while his beasts went away. Enkidu was too slow. He could not run as before, but he had gained reason and expanded his understanding. He returned. He sat at the harlot's feet. The harlot gazed upon his face. While he listened to what the harlot was saying, the harlot said to him, to Enkidu, "You are handsome, Enkidu. You are become like a god. Why roam the steppe with wild beasts? Come, let me lead you to ramparted Uruk, to the holy temple, the abode of Anu and Ishtar, the place of Gilgamesh, who is perfect in strength, and so, like a wild bull, he lords it over the young men." As she was speaking to him, her words found favor. He was yearning for one to know his heart, a friend. Enkidu said to her, to the harlot, "Come, Shamhat, escort me to the lustrous, hallowed temple, abode of Anu and Ishtar, the place of Gilgamesh, who is perfect in strength, and so, like a wild bull, he lords it over the young men. I myself will challenge him. I will speak out boldly. I will raise a cry in Uruk. I am the mighty one. I am come forward to alter destinies. He who was born in the steppe is mighty. Strength is his." Shamhat replies, "Come then, let him see your face. I will show you Gilgamesh. Where he is I know full well. Come then, Enkidu, to ramparted Uruk, where fellows are resplendent in holiday clothing, where every day is set for celebration, where harps and drums are played, and the harlots too, they are the fairest of form, rich in beauty, full of delights. Even the great gods are kept from sleeping at night. Enkidu, you who have not learned to live, oh, let me show you Gilgamesh, the joy-woe man. Look at him, gaze upon his face. He is radiant with virility, manly vigor is his. The whole of his body is seductively gorgeous. Mightier strength has he than you, never resting a day or night. O Enkidu, renounce your audacity. Gilgamesh is beloved of Shamash. Anu, Enlil, and Ea broaden his wisdom. Ere you come down from the uplands, Gilgamesh will dream of you in Uruk." Gilgamesh went to relate the dreams, saying to his mother, "Mother, I had a dream last night. There were stars of heaven around me. Like the force of heaven, something kept falling upon me. I tried to carry it, but it was too strong for me. I tried to move it, but I could not budge it. The whole of Uruk was standing by it. The people formed a crowd around it. A throng was jostling toward it. Young men were mobbed around it. Infantile, they were groveling before it. I fell in love with it. Like a woman, I caressed it. I carried it off and laid it down before you. Then you were making it my partner." The mother of Gilgamesh, knowing and wise, who understands everything, said to her son, Ninsun the wild cow, knowing and wise, who understands everything, said to Gilgamesh, "The stars of heaven around you, like the force of heaven, what kept falling upon you? You're trying to move it, but not being able to budge it. You're laying it down before me, then my making it your partner. You're falling in love with it. You're caressing it like a woman, means there will come to you a strong one, a companion, who rescues a friend. He will be mighty in the land, strength will be his. Like the force of heaven, so mighty will be his strength. You will fall in love with him and caress him like a woman. He will be mighty and rescue you time and again. He had a second dream. He arose and went before the goddess, his mother. Gilgamesh said to her, to his mother, "Mother, I had a second dream. An axe was thrown down in the street of ramparted Uruk. They were crowding around it. The whole of Uruk was standing by it. The people formed a crowd around it. A throng was jostling toward it. I carried it off and laid it down before you. I fell in love with it. Like a woman, I caressed it. Then you were making it my partner." The mother of Gilgamesh, knowing and wise, who understands everything, said to her son, Ninsun the wild cow, knowing and wise, who understands everything, said to Gilgamesh, "My son, the axe you saw is a man. You are loving it like a woman and caressing it and making it your partner means there will come to you a strong one, a companion who will rescue a friend. He will be mighty in the land, strength will be his. Like the strength of heaven, so mighty will be his strength." Gilgamesh said to her, to his mother, "Let this befall according to the command of the great counselor Enlil. I want a friend for my own counselor. For my own counselor do I want a friend." Even while he was having his dreams, Shamhat was telling the dreams of Gilgamesh to Enkidu. Each was drawn by love to the other.